Day 1. Early morning. Semyon Morozov woke up in the semi-darkness of an old barn. Pale light of dawn was breaking through the cracks in the wooden boards. Above his head was an outdated roof of corrugated metal, barely held together by crooked beams. There had been no precipitation during the night, so he was lucky to have stayed dry. He slowly stood up, sleeping in his usual clothes. He was wearing a worn-out khaki jacket, army pants and boots that had survived more than one dangerous situation. Nearby lay a Glock pistol in a torn holster and a hunting knife with a sharp blade. Semyon quickly checked the magazine. There were 13 rounds in it. The safety was off. Everything was fine. It was quiet outside. No footsteps, no groans, no screams. Only the wind blew through and the occasional crows cried out. He gathered his pack, adjusted the shotgun strap on his back, and walked out of the barn, heading for the abandoned farming community. A place with a dozen dilapidated houses, warehouse, a grain elevator, and several dilapidated barns that he had spotted from the hills the day before. Morning. The village was empty, but still worth looking at. Semyon went into the first house. The kitchen table was overturned, and there were dried bloodstains on the threshold under the door. He didn't linger. It was not the time. In the second house, there were supplies in the kitchen. In the pantry he found a can of stew, several packs of crackers, a small jar of honey, almost a full jar of instant coffee. Without thinking, Semyon opened a can of stew and ate it with a spoon, standing by the window and warily listening to his surroundings. The warm feeling in your stomach is what's really important right now. He put honey, coffee, and crackers in his backpack. It was too risky to stay there. You never knew who might hear. By midday, he was heading northwest toward the small town he had spotted the day before. He tried to avoid open spaces, especially roads and highways, as zombies were often hiding behind abandoned cars or survivors had set traps. Semyon Morozov walked across rough terrain. He crossed thickets, climbed hills, made his way through dense bushes. Dust lay on him, sweat dripped from his chin. It was hot outside in May. He rarely rested, only occasionally sitting down near a fallen tree for a couple of minutes, drinking a sip of water and setting off again. All day long he avoids the roads. One day he sees movement near an overturned school bus. He stops, takes out his binoculars and looks closely. There is one zombie, once a teenager. His clothes are torn, his movements are jerky and abrupt. Semyon did not interfere, carefully walked around him through the ditch and the slope. He spent the whole day on the road, almost without eating, only drank a little water sparingly. As the sun touched the horizon, Semyon reached the outskirts of a small settlement with a population of up to 5,000 before the disaster. Now the numbers were unknown. There was no movement, but the silence here was deceptive. He walked down the streets holding the shotgun, his finger close to the trigger, ready for any eventuality. He noticed a car repair shop, a brick building with a large gate and broken windows. The structure looked solid. The windows were covered with plywood, and the door was propped up from the outside with an iron pipe. Entering, he found a workshop. The room was dry, protected, with the smell of oil and dust. What was found in the car service? The sharp fire axe hanging on the wall in the office area looked perfectly sharp. Under the counter lay 3 packs of instant noodles next to an old gas burner. On the second floor in the lounge stood a dusty but tightly sealed bottle of whiskey, almost full water cooler. He closed the door leading to the second floor, moved the sofa, found a lighter and heated up the noodles in an old mug on the burner. He sat down on the leather sofa, listening to the silence. I drive slowly, with my eyes closed, enjoying every sip. Then he took 2 sips of whiskey. The burning in his chest gave way to almost complete calm. Night. The sofa turned out to be unusually comfortable. Semyon Morozov lowered the blinds, propped the door, put a barrier of cans at the entrance to the workshop. If anyone came in, they would immediately hear. The Glock pistol lay under the pillow, the axe by the wall. He put the shotgun near his head next to the backpack. He lay down, put one hand under his head, the other on the handle of the pistol. For the first time in a long time, he felt almost complete calm. Closed my eyes, Tomorrow will be a new day. Day 2. Semyon Morozov. Early morning. Semyon woke up early not because of sounds or alarms, but because of his internal clock. He has been surviving alone for a whole year, and his body knows when it is time to get up. The room was shrouded in semi-darkness. Only the first rays of sunlight were breaking through the cracks between the plywood boards. Semyon Morozov stretched, sat down on the sofa and ran his palms over his face. The remnants of fatigue from yesterday were still felt, but his body was gradually coming to its senses. On the floor lay a gas burner, an old stainless steel mug, and the last large pack of Korean instant noodles, doshi, with thick vermicelli threads. Semyon poured water from the cooler and turned on the burner. While the noodles were boiling, he stood by the window on the second floor, carefully watching the street. He scanned the town, noting broken windows, signs of zombies, and places with possible locked rooms. Landmarks such as a store on a crossroads, a house with a solar panel installed, a drugstore on the main street, and an abandoned warehouse with a caved-in roof stuck in his mind. The noodles were unexpectedly not spicy, with a distinct meaty aroma. He ate calmly, slowly, without fuss. Every calorie was important. In the morning, Semyon took up arms. The axe was hanging on a belt behind his waist. The Glock pistol was on his hip, and the shotgun was on his back. He began to inspect the nearest houses around the auto repair shop. Entering through the back doors, he carefully opened them and listened. Not a single blow was heard. The zombies had passed by long ago, or had moved away following the movement. The car service center was surrounded by houses with found loot. The first house contained canned goods, 2 cans of beans and 1 can of gravy, as well as 2 half-liter bottles of water and a small first aid kit with bandages, iodine, aspirin, and expired amoxicillin. In the second house, he found a half-broken safe, which he opened with a crowbar, finding a Beretta 92 pistol with 8 rounds of ammunition. Additionally, 15 rounds of 9mm pistol ammunition, an undamaged army flask, a compass. The third house, located on the edge of the area, turned out to have a disconnected refrigerator, but inside they found a bag of rice, a package of raisins, and 2 cans of stew. The plump canned goods immediately went bad. Semyon Morozov carefully wrote down all the finds in a notebook, taking into account their weight. He took only the necessary things so as not to carry unnecessary things. By midday, he had headed to the next street, deeper into the residential area. The danger was higher here, but the chance of stumbling upon something useful was significantly higher. Not far away, on a turn, he noticed 2 fast-moving zombies who ran out of a narrow alley from a faint noise. Semyon didn't shoot. He didn't want to attract the attention of the others. He slipped into the shadows at the entrance and froze. When the first monster entered the opening, he instantly stepped forward and drove the axe into the head. The second one turned around but did not have time to react. A quick blow to the temple landed accurately, and soon everything was quiet. His movements were swift and precise like those of an experienced warrior, honed by eyelids. His body worked like a mechanism without hesitation, his muscles stretched like springs. For Semyon, combat was not just a battle, but an opportunity to warm up and survive. He remained alive because he learned to be lightning among the dead. On this street, he found a book with a map of the town hidden under a rug, as well as tools, a new screwdriver, wire cutters, and a roll of copper wire. 4 granola bars replenished his food supplies. In addition, he found pain pills, a pack of iodine, and a syringe labeled morphine, which he took just in case of a serious injury. During the day, Semyon continued to inspect the remaining houses. The door to one of them was locked, but he successfully forced it open with a crowbar and found the address book and contact information itself is of little value, but inside is an important find. A list of the town's companies, a list of all the small warehouses, workshops, and even hangars. Nearby is a pack of coffee in a vacuum-sealed package. There's also a whole bunch of batteries tied together. Semyon Morozov remembered for himself that later he needed to go to the warehouse with tools. It was indicated in the directory on the southern outskirts of the settlement. When evening came, he returned to the auto repair shop at sunset. It was quiet inside. The alarm device had not worked. He carefully examined all the entrances and went up to the second floor. Having laid out all the things he had found on the table, he updated the map of the town, numbered the ordinary houses, and began to systematize the supplies. In the list of businesses, Semyon found the coordinates of several important objects: a service station, a gun shooting range, a small fire station, and even an old shelter from the Cold War. For dinner, he cooked rice and stew on a portable burner. The smell of meat brought back memories of his old life, but he quickly rejected these thoughts. Weakness is dangerous in this world. Knight Semyon was very tired. His body ached from the long walk, the stress he had experienced, and the fight. He attached a tripwire, barricaded himself in the office area, closed the blinds, put the Glock pistol by the pillow, the axe by his feet, and put the shotgun next to him. He fell onto the sofa without any unnecessary movements, covered himself with an old jacket, and put his backpack under his head. The city was still alive, although it had become much quieter than yesterday. Semyon closed his eyes and exhaled deeply. The morning would bring new plans and tasks. Day 3. Early morning. The sun was slowly beginning to paint the city with a weak golden light. Rare rays penetrated through the cracks in the blinds on the second floor of the auto repair shop. Silence reigned around. Only the soft crackling of old wood could be heard occasionally. Semyon Morozov woke up on his own, without an alarm clock. He could no longer remember the last time he had slept for more than 5 hours. He carefully got up from the sofa so as not to disturb the deathly silence. He put on his jacket, carefully examined his weapons. Everything was in its place. For breakfast, he had 2 granola bars and a cup of hot coffee, brewed right in the mug on a small gas burner. The aroma slightly lifted his spirits, giving him at least a little comfort. He sat by the window, looking out onto the fog-shrouded street. Everything seemed calm and empty, but behind this calm lurked danger. There was a notebook nearby in which he wrote down his plan for the day. The southern part of the city, a pharmacy, finding water, replenishing food supplies, and of course, ammunition. Morning. Semyon Morozov left the auto repair shop, quietly closing the door behind him. A light morning fog still hung in the streets. He moved along the southern side, hiding between the houses. He walked quickly but carefully. He held an axe tightly in his hands and had a shotgun on his back. The first house looked like a typical suburban home, with peeling paint and torn curtains. It was empty inside, but in the pantry he found a can of popcorn, a packet of aspirin, and 2 small bottles of disinfectant alcohol. Continuing on his way, he headed towards the pharmacy. The drugstore was half looted. The shelves were empty, but Semyon carefully examined the drawers, cabinets, and even looked under the floor to try to find anything the looters might have missed. As a result, I discovered a plaster, bandages, and a package of the antibiotic ciprofloxacin. A very carefully assembled medical kit for field conditions includes a tourniquet, syringes, iodine, an ampule of adrenaline, and even suture material. Behind the counter lies an overflowing box of medicines from which he took paracetamol, tablets for upset stomach, and activated charcoal. Everything is put into the backpack in detail. Now the first aid kit can be considered completely ready. Noon. As Semyon Morozov walked along the southern part of the town, he noticed a small house with a stone well nearby. He was pleased. Clean water is especially valuable here. An old but sturdy bucket was attached to the well by a chain. He carefully lowered it into the well, listening to the echoing drops. When he lifted the bucket, he made sure that the water was clear and cool. I filled up an army flask and 2 plastic bottles, after which I washed myself for a long time. Not so much for the sake of cleanliness, but to relieve the accumulated tension. I allowed myself to rest a little, sitting on the edge of the well and enjoying 5 minutes of silence. Day. The house by the well turned out to be a real success. Inside, most of the things were scattered, but clearly no one had managed to get to the secret storage room. Behind the rack in the storage room, Semyon found a thick wooden shelf with canned goods. It contained 3 cans of beef stew, 2 cans of canned beans, 1 can of tomato paste, and also 1 can each of tuna, corn, and peaches. He carefully filled the backpack, distributing the weight wisely. Nearby in the storage room, an army canteen kettle hung on a hook, a rarity. Solid aluminum with a screw cap. Semyon smiled. The lid turned out to be an unusual flask. Without it, the saucepan is perfectly suitable for cooking. Now you can safely cook a real soup. He continued to explore the house and found an old camping spoon and fork, a combined tool, and put it in the side pocket of his backpack. Evening. The sun began to set. Semyon Morozov headed back, but on the way he noticed a small house very close to the auto repair shop, which he had not inspected before. He walked inside cautiously, and luck smiled upon him again. In a locked cabinet under the carpet he found a box of 12-gauge cartridges, exactly 20 of them. He checked the ammunition. It was dry and rust-free, stored properly. Now his shotgun ammunition had increased significantly, which gave him confidence. He placed the cartridges in a separate compartment of his backpack next to the others. On the map he wrote, "House with ammunition." Checked. Night returning to the car service, he felt pleasantly tired. The backpack was heavy but filled with useful things. Today's catch was worthy. On the second floor in the workshop office, he lit a lantern, covering it with a cloth so that the light would not attract attention. He laid out everything he found on the floor. Medicines, products, a kettle and a flask, cartridges. For dinner he had stewed meat with muesli, washed down with water from a well spring. Simple, but nutritious. He remembered his thought from the morning. He needed to find pillows in the nearby houses. Today he found a couple of neatly packed pillows in a house by the well. He put them on the sofa. Now the sofa has been transformed into a full-fledged bed. There are pillows under the head and lower back, and a sleeping bag on top. The Glock lies nearby on a stool. The shotgun stands against the wall, and the axe is at the head of the bed. He lay down and took a deep breath, feeling the tension leave his back. It was as if his back was thanking him for the break. The wind outside raises dust, but today not a single zombie sound can be heard. Day 4. Southern outskirts of an abandoned town, car service temporary shelter. Early morning, Semyon Morozov woke up with the first rays of the sun, as always without an alarm, clock or unnecessary sounds. The internal clock, honed by long days alone, did not fail. The sky was gray outside, dawn was just beginning. The wind was driving dust across the empty asphalt. In the kitchen of the auto repair shop there was a package of doshi, big and thick, with wide noodle strips. Today Semyon wanted something hot, but not too spicy, so he poured more water, turning the noodles into a soup reminiscent of ramen. The smell warmed him from the inside. He stood by the window, holding the bowl with both hands, drinking warm broth and thinking about his plans for the day. Today, he had to hunt and gather. He needed to replenish his meat supply and look for mushrooms. There was no coffee today, only water from the well, but there promised to be a day with meat ahead. Morning, Semyon headed south from the town, avoiding wide roads and choosing paths between fences, overgrown roadsides and country roads. The machine gun hung securely behind his back. In his hands was a crossbow, so as not to create unnecessary noise. The weather was dry and cool, ideal conditions for a quiet hunt. Half an hour later he passed the last house, and in front of him lay a green area of the suburbs. Bushes, sparse small forest, and the remains of summer cottages. Semyon walked, listening attentively to the sounds around him. The forest was silent, and that was very convenient. Noon. He came across a clearing with mushrooms. At first glance there were russula and birch bullets. Semyon carefully checked them all. They were fresh and without wormholes. He had a mushroom atlas, and he did not rely on his memory. He carefully checked each mushroom so as not to confuse it with similar species. Collected by several large birch bullets, 2 porcini mushrooms, some small butter mushrooms. Suddenly a slight noise was heard in the bushes. Semyon Morozov crouched down, concentrated. A moment later, a pistol shot rang out, and the hare fell without a single sound or panicked movement. He approached the place, carefully examined the surroundings, quickly removed the skin from the animal, wrapped it in burlap and put it in the backpack next to the mushrooms in a separate compartment. Now lunch and dinner were guaranteed. During the day, he continued moving along the forest belt, having already skirted the city from the southeast side. The number of mushrooms was decreasing, but his gaze caught movement at the top of the tree. A partridge flapped its wings and took off. Semyon Morozov immediately dropped to one knee, took out a shotgun, and a shot rang out and the bird fell down. As the sound echoed through the trees, he was already heading towards the carcass. The noise could attract zombies, but the southern edge had been quiet for the past 2 days. He quickly cut up the bird, put the meat separately, and was going to burn the feathers later. The smell of the game was rich and appetizing. The backpack now contained the whole carcass of a hare, partridge breast, mushrooms in a bag, dried. It was about 5 in the evening. Semyon headed back to the auto repair shop. Evening. Returning home, he dropped his backpack, took off his jacket, and took a deep breath. It had been a productive day. There was still light outside, and he decided to devote the time to improving his skills. In the garage of a car service, Semyon Morozov found an old metal barrel covered in rust, but still strong. Having cut off about a third of the top with a metal saw, he turned it into an improvised grill. The barrel was placed on bricks. Inside there was a layer of coal and pieces of wooden boards. On top they placed a grate from an old air conditioner, which was thoroughly washed and lightly burned. He lit a fire, and sparks illuminated the approaching twilight. He threaded the mushrooms onto a wire skewer, and skewered the meat onto skewers he had made himself. The smell of roasting meat and mushrooms filled the space, filling it with warmth and reminding him of his long-past pre-war life. That night, Semyon dined under a street lamp hidden under the hood of a torn-off car. He ate in silence with feeling. The partridge was very crispy, the mushrooms were juicy and meaty, and he decided to save the hare for the next day. He took a flask of whiskey and took 2 short sips. His throat was doused with a burning warmth. It was a kind of ritual in honor of a successful day. Then he went up to the car service office and unfolded the sofa. The pillows brought from the neighboring house were already in their place. Semyon lay down, putting the Glock pistol next to him. On the stool lay a map of the town, a notebook, and a knife. Before going to bed, he wrote in a notebook, "Meat plus mushrooms. Partridge. Barrel as a grill. The south is calm. Tomorrow perhaps to the north." His last thoughts were peaceful. Semyon fell asleep with a slight smile. For the first time in a long time, he felt almost human, and not an animal in the world of the dead. Day 5. Early morning. Semyon woke up not from the alarm clock, but from sharp shots. They sounded somewhere from the south, in the area of the former pharmacy. He instantly jumped off the couch, grabbed the shotgun, loaded 5 rounds into the gun and 10 into the backpack. A Glock hung on his belt, and an axe lay nearby. He sat down by the window on the 2nd floor, slightly lifted the edge of the blinds and watched carefully, holding his breath. Outside stood an old, peeling pickup truck. Nearby were 4 marauders in tactical gear with machine guns. 2 were already lying on the ground. Zombies rushed at them and gnawed. 2 more desperately defended themselves, trying to shoot at the fast infected, but to no avail. The noise and the smell of blood did their job. About 5 minutes later, it was all over. There was silence. The zombies ate the marauders and now wandered nearby. Semyon exhaled. "Well, thanks for your truck, idiots." Dawn. He didn't waste any time. He ate 2 granola bars, washed them down with cool water from the cooler, tightened his belt, grabbed a Glock with a full magazine, an axe, and a backpack. Then walked out the back door. He took a detour, moving quietly and carefully. One after another, he aimed at the head and fired. Bang, bang! First 2 shots, then 3, then 1. The bullets hit the skulls accurately. The zombies fell like ragdolls. Semyon didn't waste all his bullets. He finished off the last 3 with an axe. He worked quickly, like a butcher, energetically and accurately. One zombie made a sharp move and was hit in the jaw with a hammer, and then in the temple with a blade. Another one died. In a couple of minutes, everything was finished. Purely. He examined 4 bodies of looters. They had backpacks, knives, canned food, lighters, and cartridges. One had a Glock with magazines, the other had a belt with pouches. Semyon took everything useful. He left the machine guns behind. They won't be of any use to him since he already has more than enough weapons. He got into the pickup truck. The keys were on the front seat. I started the engine. The sound was barely audible, a light hum. The car, although old, is in good condition. He slowly and silently drove the car inside the auto repair shop, then closed the gates tightly. Finally, reliable transport has appeared. Noon he took a pot and a frying pan and then went to the house with the well. The route was familiar and clean. On the spot I quickly collected fresh water, filled my pot and flask, and also took supplies for the evening dinner. On the way back I put the frying pan on the backpack strap and carried the saucepan in my hand. I moved quickly but very carefully. The water reserve has been replenished. They finished clearing the southern part of the town. I looked at 2 houses and found a bag of rice in one, cans of beans in the other, and an old bedroom with pillows. I took 2 with me, as well as a kitchen knife and a towel. We didn't come across any zombies. Probably the noise of the pickup truck in the morning scared them off. Came back light, but with useful finds. Everything was neatly stored in the workshop. Evening dinner is always important. I lit a brazier in a barrel, but this time I decided not to fry, but to cook soup. In a saucepan on the coals, water was boiling with mushrooms and pieces of partridge, which he carefully stored in a cool place. I added a little rice to make the soup filling, but not too thick. The aroma was delicious, gamey, mushroomy, and smoky. He ate slowly, without saying a word. He looked at the map, noting the places where the loot ran out. The soup turned out to be real, full of the smells of the forest and prey. Night weapons require careful handling. Semyon Morozov carefully cleaned the shotgun, lubricated the bolt, checked all the cartridges, counted. There were 5 rounds in the shotgun, 10 rounds in the backpack, plus 8 found in the looter's belongings. The total is now 23. The Glock is reloaded, the magazine is fully loaded, and 2 additional magazines are stowed in the pouches. On the second floor he made himself a sleeping place, put a sofa and brought pillows, thanks to which the rest became much more comfortable. He lay down and covered himself with a blanket, feeling some inexplicable peace inside. He had a car, water and food supplies. He was alive and not alone. The world around him was full of dangers, but it also provided resources. Somewhere in the distance, the howling of zombies could be heard, but the auto repair shop was quiet, safe and dry. Semyon Morozov quickly fell asleep. Day 6. Early morning. Woke up before the first rays of the sun. Silence all around. The sound of rain drizzled from the roof, trickling down the crack in the pickup's windshield. Inside the auto repair shop, the air was crisp. The cold soup turned out to be filling. Mushrooms, partridge, rice were still edible. Semyon ate it straight from the pot in silence without bread or seasonings, just energy. Today, he had to work. He put on his jacket, tightened his belt with pouches, secured the axe behind his back. The Glock hung on his belt, and now there was a Beretta 92 nearby, both with full magazines. Reload. No need, just change weapons, he thought. Went outside. Headed to the site of yesterday's collision. Morning. The whole situation remained the same. No one touched the marauders, neither the living nor the dead nor the animals. Only flies and vultures circling somewhere in the sky. Semyon carefully examined the bodies, collecting all the items he found. 2 AR-15 rifles with collimators, one on the back on a belt. 3 magazines of 30 rounds each, the other 2 half full. A total of about 80 rounds of 50 caliber. 1 magazine from a Kalashnikov assault rifle was empty. 1 Beretta 92 with scratches on the slide remained in working order. 2 15-round magazines. Knives, a small apple core in a backpack. Bandages. A lighter. Dirty bandages. An empty flask. Semyon Morozov had collected everything he considered necessary. He had an AR-15 rifle with a sling on his shoulder, and he put everything else in a backpack. He walked back slowly, unhurriedly, but carefully paying attention to his surroundings and sounds. As always. Noon, he returned to the auto repair shop. He opened the back door of the pickup and found a dusty 20-liter gasoline canister inside. He immediately poured fuel into the tank. Now the fuel level was almost at its maximum, enough to drive far if the opportunity arose. In the workshop, using old shelves, I made an improvised stand for weapons. I carefully laid the rifles, unloaded all the magazines, carefully examined them and determined the best AR-15. The barrel is in good condition, a little worn, but without distortions. The bolt group is clean. Then I walked east. There was a trailer park, a slum. It was just as I expected. Poverty, run-down houses, but people had lived there once and were preparing for hard times. Day. The first trailers were empty, but in the third he found a whole box of canned goods. There were beans, corn, sardines, a couple of cans of something unknown, all stored on dusty shelves. In another building under the kitchen sink, I found an unopened 6-liter bottle of water and took it. Later, in another trailer, in the old kitchen, I found 3 cans of stew, 1 granola bar, and a can of coffee. The people in poor areas did not live in luxury. They saved little by little. As a result, such reserves turned out to be better than those of many wealthy people. In the evening, he took everything back to the car service. Evening hunting has always been a valuable pastime. The hare, killed 2 days ago, was lying around until its time. Semyon cut up the carcass and, using coals from yesterday's grill, fried the hare, greasing the meat with fat from the lard. The taste was far from restaurant quality, but the aroma was reminiscent of the wild, deep, and rich. There was some leftover soup left for a side dish, which he heated up in a frying pan. Semyon ate everything completely, not leaving a crumb. The saucepan was licked clean. I washed down my meal with water from a flask. The evening was quiet. Not a sound of cars could be heard. The sky seemed leaden, but there was no sign of rain. Night, Semyon took up the rifles. He unloaded both extra AR-15s, removed the magazines, checked the bolts, and wiped them with a dry rag. The stores now totaled only 5 pieces, 3 of which were fully loaded. I put the best weapon next to the sofa. Now he had 4 units, a Glock, a Beretta 92, an AR-15 with a scope, and a shotgun with 23 rounds. I checked the contents of my backpack and rolled over onto the sofa. It was already a familiar bed. The pillows were in their places. Everything was neat and clean. He quickly fell asleep, like a man who had survived today and was mentally prepared to face whatever tomorrow would bring. Day 7. Early morning. There was silence all around. You could only hear the creaking of metal, the wind playing in the broken windows of the second floor, and somewhere on the street you could hear light rustling. Semyon woke up on the sofa, stretched and got to his feet. The hare meat remained almost fresh. Before it spoiled, it had to be fried. He laid the pieces out on the frying pan. It quickly began to sizzle. Drops of fat glistened on the coals. He put the bones, remains of the carcass, spine and paws into a pot. I put the partridge bones there, added a little water, a couple of grains of rice, and began to cook the broth. Under the boiler, he placed coals in a barrel, which he converted into a makeshift fireplace. The fire burned evenly and calmly. There was almost no smoke. The wood was dry. While the hare was roasting, Semyon sat on an overturned bucket and looked into the flames. He ate the meat straight from the knife and washed it down with water from an army flask. The broth is simmered over low heat, and by evening it will be rich and thick. Morning. On Semyon Morozov's belt there is a Glock pistol, a folding knife, a flask of water, a compass, and a backpack. Today he headed south from the city, away from the industrial areas. The area here is already familiar. Trees grow around, and nearby are areas where loners used to live. He collects mushrooms, choosing the largest specimens of chanterelles, birch boletes, champignons, and even came across one porcini mushroom, a real rarity. There is no noise or fuss along the road. Only forest sounds are heard. The cawing of crows, the rustling of leaves, and the wind. Semyon constantly looks around and listens attentively. Noon. He discovers an abandoned plot with a fallen fence and greenhouse film scattered on the ground. There are significantly more mushrooms here. The backpack is gradually filling up with almost half a kilo of collected mushrooms. Suddenly there is a noise of wings. Semyon raises his head and sees a pheasant. The reaction is instantaneous. A shot from the Glock. The sound of a silencer. The bird falls. Comes to check the hit is accurate, the wing is broken, but the meat remains intact. He carefully takes the carcass, placing it in a backpack so as not to damage the mushrooms. Day returns to the car service easily and quickly, but with the loot. He passes by familiar ruins, looks towards the south. There are no zombies or enemies there yet, only wind and emptiness. He goes inside, puts the trophy on the table, sorts through the mushrooms. He throws out a few spoiled ones. The rest look quite edible. Then he goes out into the yard, locks the gate, and starts preparing food again. Evening. The broth turned out to be really rich. All the juices had been drawn out of the bones during the whole day. Semyon Morozov removes the pot from the stove and strains the broth. He adds fried mushrooms, a handful of finely chopped pheasant meat, and the remains of hare meat to make a hearty and thick stew. The smell is so real that it seems as if this is not the end of the world, but an ordinary hunting camp somewhere deep in the forest. The dinner is simple and nutritious, cooked with love. Semyon Morozov eats quietly and unhurriedly right by the barrel. He has a saucepan on his lap, and the spoon is made from a broken hammer handle that he carved himself. He drinks water and listens attentively to the surrounding silence. The city is calm. Nothing disturbs the sound piece. The workshop was in semi-darkness. Only a small flashlight hanging on a nail radiated a dim yellow light. Semyon unfolded a map of the city and sat down at the table, placing a knife and a pistol next to him. He marked the different areas on the map. The west had already been thoroughly surveyed. The south had been almost completely searched. The east still held potential for expeditions. The northern residential area needed reconnaissance. The central part of the city was dangerous due to the large number of buildings and, possibly, a concentration of undead. He marked priority targets for raids in red, plotting routes through alleys and trying to avoid open streets. Then he turns off the flashlight and examines his weapons. The AR-15 rifle is always at hand. Both pistols are loaded, and the shotgun stands near the wall. He takes off his clothes and lies down on the sofa. You can hear the wind playing with the tin sheet somewhere outside. Semyon closes his eyes thinking about tomorrow's flight. But the main thing now is to stay alive for another day. Day 8. Early morning. He wakes up at dawn, as always, to the sounds of silence and cold. The metal of the garage is cold to the touch, and the air smells faintly of ash coming from the barrel. Semyon stretches, stands up, turns on his pocket flashlight and heads towards the saucepan. The soup from the day before had thickened, but was still nutritious. He didn't reheat it, but ate it cold, spoonful after spoonful. The taste of simple but satisfying ingredients of pheasant meat, mushrooms, and rice gives strength for new challenges. He drinks water from a flask, immediately examines the magazines and hides them in his belt. He has a Glock 17 pistol and a Beretta 92, both ready and loaded. In the backpack go 5 magazines for 9mm pistol cartridges, 2 magazines for 223 caliber cartridges, 1 shotgun magazine, a hunting knife, gloves, a compass, and a 5-liter jerry can, which is empty for now, but is intended for water. Today's target is the sheriff's office. Here you can find weapons, important documents, equipment, and maybe even a bulletproof vest. In the morning, Semyon Morozov opens the gate and drives the pickup truck outside. In the trunk are an AR-15, a shotgun, an axe, a spare tire, and several boxes of ammunition. He carefully checks the doors, the cable, and the headlight mount. Everything is in place. The engine starts and idles smoothly. The muffler is homemade, which muffles the sound. Semyon drives first along the southern street, then heads northeast toward the city center. The sheriff's office is located on the main street where the administrative buildings used to be. Now it's ruins, shadows from the destruction, cars with broken windows, and a couple of bodies in uniform lying on the side of the road. Semyon drives up very carefully and does not turn off the engine right away. He looks around. There are no zombies, but fresh tire tracks and boot prints in the dust indicate that people have been here recently. He turns off the engine, takes the Glock in his hands and opens the door, then goes inside. By mid-afternoon, the building appears intact, but the windows are boarded up and the door had to be broken down with a crowbar. Inside, there is dust, the smell of old paper and the oily scent of weapons. Faded notices, shift schedules and photographs of employees hang on the walls. Semyon carefully makes his way into the armory, where the armored door has been knocked down from the outside. It's obvious that someone has been here, but apparently they didn't have time to take everything. Here he finds ammunition, 40 12-gauge shotgun shells and 6,357 Magnum rounds. Caliber 9mm, about 100 rounds laid in a box. Cartridges for caliber 223 Remington, about 80 pieces, stored in several magazines, some scattered nearby. Weapon, Smith & Wesson, 686 caliber 357 revolver, chrome-lined 6-inch barrel in excellent condition. Colt Python, 357 caliber, 4-inch barrel, black body, grip has minor wear. Remington, 700 rounds of caliber 223. Plastic stock, equipped with bipod and optics of the Leupold brand. The bolt moves smoothly and without jamming. Semyon Morozov takes all of this, carefully places it in a backpack in a box that he took from a pickup truck. The ammunition is located separately. A bulletproof vest was found in the closet. It was covered in blood and was punctured, so it was completely useless. He took the flask, after which he discovered a thermos with a faded inscription, Sheriff McAllen, and kept it as a souvenir. I checked the status of the computers. They are turned off and there has been no power for a long time. During the day, I decided to go around the neighboring houses. There are only 3 buildings on the alley. All the windows are boarded up, but one house opens. There is chaos inside. Signs of a struggle are visible. However, we managed to find canned beans, stewed meat, beans, about 10 cans in total. First aid kit, bandages, plasters, an old syringe, and a bottle of iodine. Tools, motorcycle wheel, adjustable wrench and pliers, all useful for repairing a pickup truck. There is nothing useful in the second house. Only a dead dog and an old refrigerator covered in mold. In the third house, a box containing 29mm rounds and a photograph of the sheriff's family were found under the bed. Semyon Morozov takes the cartridges and puts the photograph back in place. In the evening, returns to the car service. The pickup truck drives inside. The gates are closed and additionally reinforced with boards. Semyon lays out the trophies on the table. The Colt Python revolver is a powerful close combat weapon, ideal for emergency situations. The Smith & Wesson 686 revolver is accurate, reliable, and quite powerful. Remington 700 will become the main rifle for hunting and long-range shooting. Semyon Morozov carefully cleaned the weapon, wiped the optical sight. He examined each cartridge carefully and sorted out suspicious ones. Yesterday's soup remained for dinner, which he warms up in a saucepan. To give the dish a richer taste and satiety, he adds a couple of spoons of stew. He dines by the barrel, enjoying the complete silence and peace around him. Night falls. While the workshop is shrouded in darkness, Semyon takes out the map again to make a plan. He notes, the sheriff's office has already been searched. The northwestern part of the territory has not yet been checked. The east is a residential area. Perhaps there will be food there. The city center is dangerous, but he hopes to find valuable trophies. He falls asleep with his weapon at hand. A new day promises new dangers, but also valuable resources. Now he has an accurate rifle, 2 reliable revolvers, and a significant supply of ammunition. Day 9. Early morning. Wakes up before dawn, as always. Feels a slight chill. A weak light comes through the cracks in the gate. First of all, pours boiling water into a mug, puts in some stew and crackers. Breakfast is strict and simple. The remains of soup with beans and mushrooms, a cracker broken into pieces, and pine tea that has been brewed overnight. Semyon eats silently by the barrel, where the coals from the previous night are still smoldering, warming up. He gets ready quickly, wears a Beretta 92 pistol with a full clip on his belt, and an axe with a shortened handle hangs on his back. The backpack is almost empty, only water, a bandage, a knife, gloves, and a compass. He keeps 2 spare clips for the pistol in his pocket. The target is the western part of the city, a private sector, not yet checked. Morning. Semyon goes out on foot through the northern gate, moves in a serpentine motion, carefully examining the alleys. The weather is gloomy, the wind raises leaves and dust. Visibility is good. The first zombies appear a block away. 3 people rush towards him, their steps unsteady. Semyon Morozov takes out a Beretta, aims 1 shot at each of their heads. All 3 fall almost simultaneously. The magazine is empty. He quickly changes it in an instant. 50 meters later, 4 more appear, moving slowly. There is a noise. They climb out of the destroyed entrance. The Beretta is put away. An axe is taken instead. The first zombie is hit from the side. The crunch of the skull is heard. The second one receives 2 powerful blows to the face. The third one receives a strong blow to the crown. The handle of the axe is covered in blood. The fourth one, slow, simply knocks him down and crushes his head against the curb. Semyon breathes heavily but is not injured. He carefully examines the bodies, all empty. He moves on. It's midday. There are old houses to the west, some of them burned down, some abandoned. Semyon goes from one building to another, choosing those with intact doors. In the first house, he finds 3 cans of soup, a plastic bottle of water, and an army first aid kit with old bandages and a few ibuprofen tablets. There's a moldy sleeping bag in the attic, but he doesn't dare take it. The second house is empty. Dust, trash, and a dead cat in the bathroom. In the pantry, he finds a box of nails, which he decides to take as a spare in case of repairs. In the third house, a pair of socks, a flask, and a knife with a wooden handle. He finds 10 9mm rounds in a tin cigarette box. Semyon smiles. This makes him happy. As he explores the kitchen, he hears rustling outside. There are zombies there, but they do not try to enter. He leaves silently through the back door. During the day, he returns to the base heading east, passing through a deserted area. 200 meters before the auto repair shop, he notices 3 slow zombies. He doesn't waste a bullet, takes an axe in his hands. He knocks down the first one with 1 blow, the second one slowly opens his mouth yawning, gets an axe to the temple and also falls. The third man with the backpack. Semyon Morozov hits him several times in the side, then in the neck and finishes him off. The backpack turned out to be intact, made of leather, with a buckle fastened on the chest. He carefully removes it and carries it under the canopy, then opens it. Inside, he finds 4 cans of corn, peas, tuna paste, and condensed milk. Flare pistol, but no cartridges. A book called Field Notes on Survival, a sealed pack of cigarettes, and a photograph of a girl, clearly old and wrinkled. The backpack is of good quality, so he decides to keep it. He won't need the flare gun for now, so he puts it in the drawer. Evening is coming. The car service is closed. The situation is calm. Semyon turns on the flashlight, puts on the pot, and fries the mushrooms with stew. Add a little water and cereal to make a thick and filling soup. Eats straight from the lid, hiding behind the barrel. He drinks water and looks closely at the weapons lying on the table. An AR-15, a Glock, a Beretta, a Colt Python, a 6.86 revolver, and a Remington 700. There is still strength. He turns on the flashlight and starts checking the supplies. Night falls. Semyon takes a notebook and, under the lamp and flashlight, begins to write down data by category. Ammunition. 140 rounds of 2.23mm ammunition. 60 in magazines, 80 loose. 180 rounds of 9mm ammunition. 100 in a box. 80 in magazines. 60 rounds of 357 Magnum ammunition, 40 rounds. Of 12-gauge shotgun shells, no 22 LR, no 308, no flares. Weapons. AR-15 in working order. Remington 700 clean with checked sights. Glock 17 main pistol. Beretta 92 backup. Colt Python heavy but clean. Smith & Wesson 686 revolver as a reserve. A battle axe and 3 knives. Food. 22 cans of various types of food, 1.5 kilos of cereal and rice, 12 liters of water, 1 packet of crackers, a little salt cigarettes 1 pack. There is no alcohol, a small amount of whiskey in a metal flask. Other. The flashlight is in good working order, and there are spare batteries, empty canister bag of nails, field notebook on survival bandages, iodine, medicines, rope, duct tape, crowbar, city map, compass stationery, pens, notebooks. Having written everything down, Semyon Morozov turns off the light. He sits down on the mattress, places the pistol next to him, and leans the rifle against the wall. The city is silent. Semyon is in a state of battle even when he is resting. Day 10. Early morning. Semyon wakes up at dawn to sounds outside the gate. Crows cawing on rusty pipes, the wind rustling through the broken windows of the neighboring house. Breakfast is yesterday's soup. He heats up the leftovers directly in the tin on the burner. Thick stew with stewed meat and cereals. A wooden spoon from the kitchen that was found. Washes it down with water from a flask. After eating, he sits down at an improvised table, an old car door placed on 2 boxes. Expands the map to show the following. The western part of the city in the map is marked with bold crosses, indicating the houses he surveyed yesterday. You can see an area with private estates that are still intact. It marks possible escape routes, courtyards for bypass routes. There's a supermarket in the south. Semyon knows that the building is intact. It's quiet outside, but inside, there are dozens of zombies there. You can see them through the shop windows from the hill near the service station. The plan is, don't go there for now. He writes it down in a notebook. Need a distraction? Noise from the other side, fire, engine sound, smoke. Possible options. The grenade cannot be used. There is a flare gun, but no flares. A column with a generator is just a dream for now. Car with a locked gas pedal. Liver dummy bait. Fire 100 meters from the object. It is possible to set fire to an abandoned house. The task is not easy. Semyon Morozov decides to postpone it temporarily. Morning. Today's plan is to survey gas stations. He has already noticed that there are 6 of them in the city, and another one is located outside, on the highway. He marks their location on the map. Northern outside the city, south near the car service, western in the private sector, central near the city hall, east in the industrial zone. Northwest near the shopping center, southeast in the suburbs. Today, his path lies to the southern one, the closest one. He has an axe on his shoulder, a Glock pistol on his belt, and empty canisters in his backpack. Noon. The gas station at the car service has been preserved almost completely. There are no zombies there, which is quite rare. The pump is not working, but there is still some fuel in the tank. Semyon pumps out about 5 liters using a hose. After that, he heads inside the mini-market on the territory of the gas station. There, luck awaits him. 30 Snickers bars in a box in a warehouse. 12 servings of instant noodles. Spicy chicken flavor. Made in China. Almost 1 kilogram of chocolate and marmalade. 3 bottles of the cheapest whiskey, 2 cans of beer, 1 bottle of cognac, 6 tin cans and 3 plastic bottles of Coca-Cola. A pack of matches. Plastic tableware. Toilet paper, toothbrushes, and razors are lying nearby. Semyon takes a toothbrush and toothpaste for the first time in many days. In the utility room, he finds 2 canisters of 10 liters each. One of them is half empty, the other is almost full. He fills the pickup's tank to full capacity and takes both containers with him. During the day, returns back to the car service. Everything goes quickly. The road is clean and free. He closes the gate, snapping 2 bolts with a familiar movement of his hands. He begins unloading. He carefully places the Snickers in a box that is usually used for tools. He places the noodles next to the canned goods. He places the alcohol on the top shelf and lowers the bottle of cola into a barrel of water to quickly cool it. He carries the canisters into the garage and places them under the workbench. He immediately takes out a new toothbrush, brushes his teeth, and the feeling almost forgotten returns. He sits down on a box, opens a Snickers bar and eats it all, washing it down with cold water. A slight shiver runs through his body from the sugar. It's a pleasant feeling. Looking at his watch, he notices that it's still light. Decides to go out of town, into the woods, to pick mushrooms and perhaps hunt game. Takes a rifle, a knife, and water with him. Outside the base in the evening, the forest is silent. Only birds can be heard, but there is no game nearby. There are almost no animal tracks, only a couple of fresh hoof prints, most likely elk or deer, but too far to catch up. He finds mushrooms, lots of chanterelles, a couple of porcini mushrooms and a handful of puffballs. He carefully cuts them off and puts them in a bag. He returns in the evening, tired but happy. Evening lights the burner again. Cooks the pea porridge in a saucepan for a long time until it becomes soft and stops crunching. Then fries the collected mushrooms in a frying pan with a small amount of oil from the dressing and salts to taste. Mixes the mushrooms with the porridge. It turns out very aromatic and rich, like a dish from an expensive restaurant. He eats silently, looking out the window. The sun slowly sets behind the destroyed horizon. Night. The mood is festive and bright. He opens a bottle of inexpensive whiskey, pours the drink into an iron mug, adds Coca-Cola. He drinks slowly without a snack, enjoying the taste. It has been a long time since he allowed himself such a moment. Even the noise around him has stopped, as if silence had fallen. He writes in his notebook, "Postpone going to the supermarket, priority to explore Western territories, plan another refuel tomorrow. Mushrooms are available, there is alcohol too. Snickers will last for 7 days. The weapon is located nearby. Glock is under the pillow. An AR-15 machine gun stands near the wall, a round in the chamber. The axe is under the table." He lies down on the makeshift mattress, his head spinning from the whiskey. For the first time in a long time, sleep comes quickly. Day 11. Early morning. Semyon wakes up at dawn. It's still cool outside. Fog is falling on the asphalt. In the kitchen corner of the auto repair shop, steam is rising quietly on a small burner. Instant noodles with mushrooms are cooking. Chanterelle and porcini mushrooms collected yesterday. Chinese noodles, spicy chicken flavor, filtered water from a canister, a little salt, dry spices from army rations to improve. The aroma. The smell is rich, almost homey. He eats slowly, using a spoon. Hot food gives him strength for the whole day. He washes it down with coffee from a bag, stirring it right in an iron mug. Checks equipment. A hunting rifle with 2 cartridges in the barrel and 5 in the pouch. Glock on the belt. Knife on the belt. The backpack contains a flask, a bandage, a hacksaw, the pitiful remains of mushrooms, and a rope. The pickup is filled to the brim with 2 additional canisters in the back. The plan for the day is hunting. The goal is to find not only game, but also berries, mushrooms, and possibly other useful resources in the forest. He gets behind the wheel and drives south from the small village, along roads forgotten by time. Morning in the forest wilderness. After about 30 minutes of driving, he turns onto a dirt road. Tall grass is pushing through the old broken surface. The asphalt here has not been repaired even once in many years. To the left is a dense coniferous forest, and to the right is a birch grove. He leaves the car near a fallen tree, as if under a roof of spruce shade. He takes a backpack, throws a gun over his shoulder, and plunges into the forest wilderness. Sunlight shines through the branches. The air is filled with humidity, the smell of mushrooms and wet earth. Semyon Morozov moves slowly, carefully examining the moss and roots under his feet. He manages to find a few boletus and aspen mushrooms, a small group of chanterelles, a handful of ripe, juicy blueberries, and some sour, wild red raspberries. There are almost no animal tracks, but sometimes you can hear the crunch of branches far away in the thicket. Perhaps it is a deer carefully making its way. He collects mushrooms in a bag and puts berries in a plastic noodle jar. Every now and then he stops to listen. There is silence around him. No zombies, no other people. Total silence. Noon. Luck by the lake. By lunchtime he comes to a small lake deep in the forest. It is a quiet backwater, densely overgrown with reeds, but the water remains clear. On the other bank he notices at least 5 ducks. Semyon Morozov freezes. lies down on his stomach and carefully takes out his gun. There is a sharp single shot, then a second. 2 ducks fall into the water, the rest take to the sky in panic. He carefully enters the water up to his knees and pulls out the carcasses. Blood and feathers are on the surface, the meat is fresh. He ties the ducks with a rope, puts them in a bag and wraps them in a rag. Day way back. On the way back, he returns to the car. The weather is getting worse. The sky is becoming cloudy. The wind is getting stronger. He moves slowly, looking around from time to time. Suddenly there is movement right next to the road. Dog, lonely, dirty, black and white, reminiscent of a courtyard, stands and looks at him with his head bowed and his ears pressed back. Semyon Morozov stops and answers with a glance. In a moment he makes a decision. Shot. The dog falls to the ground, twitches a little and falls silent. He gets out of the car and examines the body. The dog is in normal condition without signs of illness and was probably previously a domestic dog. He takes the carcass, wraps it in a tent and puts it in the back of the truck. Meat is meat. Evening dinner and smoking. Returning to the car service, he immediately begins cutting up the carcasses. The duck is plucked, gutted, and cleaned. He takes the dog apart like he would on a hunt. He removes the hind legs, shoulder blades, and takes a little of the fillet. He puts the bones and skin aside. For dinner, he decides to grill dog meat. Rubs it with salt, spices, and a little vinegar from the camping kit. He lights the coals in a metal barrel and places a grate from an old refrigerator on top. Fry slowly, turning every 5 minutes. The aroma is reminiscent of pork, but with a sharper undertone. The meat turned out tough, but nutritious. The rest of the dog is sent for smoking. Uses an old barrel, birch and apple wood chips smolder underneath. The meat is suspended on a wire and covered with a lid. The smoke is thick and aromatic. He checks the process every 20 minutes to make sure everything is going according to plan. Night tired, well fed, and with the smell of smoke soaking into his hair and clothes, Semyon Morozov writes down his thoughts in a notebook. 2 ducks are divided into 2 parts. One part is left for dinner, the other part is dried. Dog meat is intended for dinner and smoking. Mushrooms and berries have been sent to storage. The whiskey has not been touched yet. There are only 5 caches of shotgun shells left. He turns off the light. There is a weapon lying nearby. The axe is by the door. Smoked meat under constant supervision. The night passes peacefully. Semyon Morozov falls asleep for the first time with the feeling of real prey. Today was a good day. He was wild but correct. The 12th day, early morning. Semyon wakes up smelling a faint whiff of smoke from the smoking barrel, the warm, spicy aroma of smoking still wafting through. He yawns and stretches, goes outside and checks the process. The meat is smoking properly, dark and shiny, hanging over birch chips. A light breeze blows through the yard, driving away the night dampness. For breakfast, yesterday's smoked dog meat, he eats slowly, washing it down with water. The meat is tough, elastic in places, but nutritious. Smoking has given it a slightly sweet taste, reminiscent of bacon with a wild undertone. This isn't a restaurant, he says quietly to himself, but it's almost becoming familiar. Next, he proceeds to cut up the second duck, carefully separates the fillet from both sides, cuts off wings and legs to fry later. The rest of the carcass is sent to the barrel for cooking broth. He turned the barrel into a kind of cauldron, a low fire below, a saucepan on top. There is enough water to cook soup while he is on the sortie. Adds to the broth 3/4 of the mushrooms collected yesterday, salt, a little dried garlic from the army rations, and a pinch of hot pepper. Semyon Morozov carefully lowers a sprig of thyme, which he found in one of the looted houses on top. Its delicate aroma spreads around. Then he covers the pot with a lid and carefully watches that the fire is low. The broth should simmer slowly and for a long time. Early in the morning, Semyon heads west. Leaving the garage, he gets into a pickup truck and makes sure the tank is full. His weapons are always at hand, a Glock in a holster, a shotgun behind the seat, an axe in the trunk, and a knife attached to his belt. The goal is to continue a thorough search of the western part of the city. Semyon explains, "Wealthy families, lawyers, officials, and architects used to live here. You can still find valuables here, maybe safes, wine cellars, and workshops." He carefully marks the streets he checked the day before on his map and plans to go through new ones. He hides the car around the corner of an old luxury building, then goes on foot with gloves and master keys. Some doors have already been broken down, others are locked. Sometimes he simply pushes the locks out with his shoulder. Inside, there is silence, dust, and a rich echo. By midday, Semyon enters a mansion with 2 garages where old guns once hung on the walls. Most of them are already gone, but in the storage room, luck happens. He finds an expensive 1858 Remington replica with ebony and blued steel, almost a museum piece in excellent condition with engraving. Nearby lie 100 caps, a box of ball bullets, and a leather pouch of black powder. He carefully opens the revolver cylinder, twists it, cocks it, and says, "The mechanics are perfect, reliable, impressive. It's not a combat revolver, but it's fully functional, and its appearance can be a great deterrent." Semyon carefully places it in his backpack like a relic, showing respect. In another house in the basement, Semyon Morozov finds a folding fishing rod made of carbon, branded and very expensive. There is a box with fishing accessories nearby. Swivels, floats, flies, spinners, Japanese-made hooks, strong fishing line, as well as a small bag of bait. This can be considered a real trophy, equal in level to a gift to yourself. Semyon smiles. Now fishing is a real way to obtain resources. There's little food left in the houses of the rich, but he collects 2 cans of tuna, red dry wine, half a sack of rice that is hidden in the cellar, old cheese, almost dried, out but without traces of mold, several packs of nuts, almonds and pistachios. Later, closer to the evening, when the sun is already beginning to set, he returns to the car service. The smoke from the smoker is still rising into the air. The meat is done, dark, shiny, and firm to the touch. The aroma of smoked duck, wood smoke, and broth wafts through the air. He lifts the lid and opens the pan. The soup has a cloudy, rich appearance. The mushrooms float to the surface and golden fat floats around it. The aroma is rich and deep, with a bright, wild hue. The broth turned out very strong. Semyon pours half of the soup into a bowl and leaves it to cool. In the evening, he sits by the fire and eats duck soup with mushrooms. The meat melts in your mouth, especially the breast. The mushrooms give the soup an almost meaty taste. There's no bread, he thinks, but add some nuts to the soup. The idea seems strange, but it gives a pleasant crunch. He drinks water and then a sip of red wine, tart, old, but still drinkable. Looking around the auto repair shop, I hear only silence instead of the noise of hooves and the groans of the dead. It's like a corner of paradise in hell. He took out the Remington, cleaned it thoroughly, and carefully placed the primers in a box. I wrote it down in my notebook. Revolver, 100 caps, gunpowder, 200 grams, a fishing rod with a full set of tackle, wine, cheese, nuts, mushrooms, rice, duck, still being smoked. The food supply has been replenished. Night fell. He checked the doors and shutters, turned off the light. He hung the gun on the wall and put the Glock next to it. He keeps an axe at hand. Lying down, he listened to the wind carry the smell of smoke down the street. Today he not only survived, he lived. The sleep was deep. Peace is fragile but true. Day 13. Early in the morning, Semyon Morozov woke up early, around 5:40 in the morning before dawn. He stretched out on a makeshift cot against the wall of the workshop, inhaling the smell of smoked meat, forest tea, and ash. When it began to get light outside, he lit a fire in the stove and cooked breakfast. Morning menu. I lightly fried a couple of thin pieces of smoked dog meat in a frying pan. I coarsely chopped the mushrooms I had collected earlier, threw them into a soot frying pan, salted and peppered them, and when they started to brown, sprinkled them with grated hard cheese, The cheese melted, forming a golden crust on the mushrooms. I boiled water in a pot, brewed a tea bag, and added a handful of dried raspberries. The tea acquired a rich scarlet color with a slight sourness and forest aroma. He ate in silence, enjoying the taste. The mushrooms with cheese turned out amazingly tasty, crispy edges, and a melted center. I sat by the fire, drank tea, and watched the day break through the morning fog. Morning is the time to collect fuel. As the sun rose above the horizon, Semyon Morozov drove his pickup truck through the gate and headed south. His task was simple: find abandoned cars from which he could drain the remaining fuel. He drove slowly along overgrown roads that once led to summer cottages in the outskirts of the city. He had everything he needed with him: several canisters, a thin hose, gloves, a Glock pistol, and a knife, all attached to his belt. The pickup was running with the radio on, picking up the noise of the airwaves. During the morning, Semyon inspected 6 cars. 2 of them were completely empty. 2 had 4 or 5 liters of fuel left. 1 car had an almost full tank, which was a real jackpot, and another was filled with diesel, which was not suitable for him. He poured about 25 liters of gasoline into his canisters and poured another 15 directly into the tank. Now he would have enough fuel for at least 3 or 4 long trips. When he leaned under the hood of one of the cars, there was a rustle in the grass. Semyon froze. A crow suddenly flew up from a tree. But the ability to always be on the alert became his second instinct. By midday, he turned off the road and headed for a familiar forest lake where he had caught ducks a couple of days ago. He took out a new folding fishing rod, assembled it right there. Having chosen a spoon, he threw it into the water. 15 minutes later, there was a bite. He pulled out a medium-sized perch with a spiny dorsal fin, lively and alive. He cleaned the fish right away so as not to pollute the water, and buried the insides in the moss. Later, Semyon went to a stream in the lowlands. He changed the bait and cast the line. At first the fish ran away, but soon a strong blow followed, and he, gritting his teeth, began to pull. "Come on, red friend," he said to himself. Soon he caught 1 salmon weighing about 2 kilograms, strong and healthy, a real gift. He cleaned this fish too and carefully put it in a bag. On the way back, I collected a bucket of mushrooms, chanterelles, birch boletes. I also left behind 2 handfuls of black currants. In the evening, after a dinner with wine, I returned to the car service. The first thing I did was examine the smoked duck that I took off the hangers. The skin was dense, amber-colored, and the meat was elastic and rich in aroma. I put the bird in a cool corner, saving it for a special occasion. Then he started preparing the rice, adding a little salt and putting it on to boil. I fried mushrooms in a frying pan, adding grated cheese. I cut up a fresh piece of perch but decided to fry it the next day. I finished the red wine from the remaining bottle. The drink was warm, tart, a little flat, but still tasty. Dinner passed quietly, like a return to normal life. I sat with the gate slightly open to look out onto the street, where the sunset was painting the clouds bronze on the horizon. Before going to bed, Semyon carefully checked the doors and bolts, added oil to the lamp, brought the fishing rod and fish into the workshop, and examined the rifle and Glock. Pistol. In the notebook I noted 25 liters of gasoline, salmon, perch, duck taken off the smoker, wine finished, mushrooms, cheese and rice eaten, firewood supply almost running. Out. I turned off the light and lay down on the mat by the wall. The car was under the canopy, the weapon was nearby. I fell asleep to the whisper of the wind and the quiet crackling of the coals. The night was calm, not the slightest sounds of zombies. Sleep was heavy and deep, without dreams. Day 14, smoke and flesh. Early in the morning, Semyon woke up at dawn at about 5:30. The air was filled with the smells of burning wood and something warm, echoes of yesterday's dinner. For breakfast, leftover cooked rice fried in a pan along with pieces of fried perch. The fish was fresh, although it had been sitting for some time, with a rich aroma. The meat was dense, snow-white, with a slightly crispy crust. After eating, Semyon Morozov went out into the yard. The sky was covered with clouds. The morning was damp and cool. He took a small saw and an axe and headed to the auto repair shop where he remembered several young maples in an abandoned alley. I chose a thin and straight tree about 10 centimeters in diameter. I sawed it, chopped it into logs and branches, brought it to the workshop, and carefully stacked it next to the stove and smokehouse. Now the supply of firewood was calculated for 3 to 4 days of smoking and cooking. After that, Semyon took out the salmon fillet, which he had salted the day before, and washed. He hung the meat in a homemade smokehouse made from an iron barrel and closed it tightly. At the bottom, he lit the smoke from smoldering apple and maple branches. The fillet had to be smoked throughout the day while he was in town. 8 o'clock in the morning, trip to the western part of the city. Semyon Morozov started the pickup and drove to the western district. It was a wealthy street with houses, many of which had garages, alarms, and wrought iron fences. Some buildings had already been looted, but second floors and basements were often still accessible. He inspected 3 houses. The first house had a broken door, was in disarray inside, and contained the remains of burnt bodies. In the basement, he found a box of batteries, 2 cans of stew, and several kitchen knives. In addition, a box of old cigarettes and a box of matches were found. The second house was partially damaged by fire. There was a battery in the garage which Semyon unscrewed and took with him. There was also an old box of motor oil, almost empty. Third section. The house was empty, but in the closet there was a sleeping bag, a jacket, and a jar of honey. There was an empty 20-liter canister in the storage room, which I took for possible use. Noon meeting with zombies. It was already around midday, near the 4th house. Semyon Morozov got out of the pickup truck and immediately heard a hoarse, moist howl. 3 zombies emerged from the shadows of a side passage. One was in a police uniform, another in a dirty jacket, and the third woman in a robe with her inside sticking out. Semyon didn't lose the composure. He pulled out a Glock 17 pistol and fired 2 shots into the head of the closest man. The first one hit him in the cheek, but didn't kill him. But the second one hit him right in the eye. The body collapsed. The second zombie rushed at him. Semyon jumped back, hit him on the knee with a crowbar, knocked him down, and then finished him off with a pistol butt to the skull. The third zombie crawled towards him, but he calmly took aim and shot at the forehead. 3 fallen. The noise was not strong. No one else appeared. He reloaded the gun, examined the bodies of the police officer, and found handcuffs and a pocket knife, which he took with him. He quickly returned to the pickup and continued searching. The day continues with exploration. Semyon inspected 2 more houses. There was almost nothing in one, but in the basement he found a box with 4 cans of condensed milk. The expiration date was still in order. In the second house there was an almost complete first aid kit. Bandages, iodine, antiseptic, 2 packs of aspirin, an old blood pressure monitor and pain pills. In one of the garages he found a bicycle in good condition. Semyon removed the pump, tube, and seat from it. Perhaps in the future he will assemble another vehicle. By 7 o'clock the sun had begun to set. The sky had taken on the color of cold metal. Semyon Morozov got behind the wheel of his pickup truck and drove out of the city. Evening time was a time of meal and peace. The smell of smoke and smoked fish hung in the workshop. He examined the smokehouse. The salmon had darkened, the meat was firm, and the smell filled the entire space. Nevertheless, he left it hanging until morning so that the dish would cool and soak up the aromas. For dinner, he heated up a can of stew and added mushrooms from his supplies, boiled a handful of buckwheat and cut a slice of bread from his supplies. He put on some tea with raspberries and currants. Semyon lit one of his cigarettes, sitting by the slightly open door of the workshop, listening to the evening slowly dying away. The wind carried the smoke outside. The city was immersed in silence. There were no shots or screams. Night had come. Semyon locked the gate and carefully placed the things he had found. He examined the ammunition. He had used 3 rounds from the Glock. 40 remained. He examined the pistol, lubricated the mechanism, and made a note in his notebook. Battle 3 zombies destroyed. Found. Stew. Condensed milk. Medicine. Batteries. Sleeping bag. -3 rounds. Salmon smoking almost finished. He lay down on the mattress by the stove, covered himself with a blanket. The Glock and knife lay nearby. There was silence around. Only his even breathing and the faint crackling of coals could be heard. Sleep came quickly, was deep, dreams of a quiet fishing trip. Day 15 began with a hunter's breakfast in the early hours. He woke up a little later than usual, at 6 o'clock, feeling well rested. Outside the window, fog spread, dampness spread along the ground. The gray sky seemed to press on his shoulders. But inside it was warm, the stove was smoldering, the workshop was filled with the smell of smoke and meat. For breakfast, smoked duck cut off a piece of breast, fat shimmers, aroma is rich but not sharp. Eats with hands, chews thoroughly with pleasure. Meat is tender, full of taste, slightly sweet from wood smoke. A Snickers bar found in an old hiding place is a rare find. It breaks in your hands, but the taste brings back memories of old times. A feeling of coziness, almost joy, appears. Washes it down with water, fresh, from a canister that has been left to settle beforehand. After the meal, he washes the knife, checks the sharpness of the axe, and fills his pouch with bandages, a canteen of water, a crowbar, a Glock still with 40 rounds, and a knife. On his belt. Objective: clear the western part of the city. Morning search on the western streets. He drives his pickup truck carefully along the side of the road. He passes a couple of familiar houses, then a new street with one-story cottages. First house. The door is locked. The window is broken. There are dried traces of blood inside, but it is quiet. In the kitchen there is a jar of mustard, half a pack of rice, 2 cans of red beans. In the bathroom there is half a first aid kit with bandages and old painkillers. A pocket flashlight was found on the floor. It works. Second house. There is a bicycle chain and a pump in the garage. In the attic there is an old army sleeping bag, coffee in a tin can, almost full. I also took a small gas canister for the stove with me. The search continues at noon. The sun breaks through the clouds. He heats up water on a portable stove on the hood of his truck, washing it down with a handful of nuts. Then he continues his rounds. Third house. Empty. In the closet there is an old raincoat, warm socks, and some cereal. Fourth house. The alarm went off as soon as the door was opened. Semyon Morozov froze in place. Waited. There was silence. There was nothing inside except an ancient television and magazines scattered across the floor. Day of a new battle with the living dead. Semyon was heading back when he noticed movement between the parked cars. A fast zombie-like young guy in a torn hoodie suddenly jumped out from around the corner, his eyes wild, his clawed fingers outstretched. Semyon didn't take aim. He grabbed the axe from his shoulder, took a step to the left. The zombie rushed past. He struck from the side in the back of the head with a crunch. The brain flew across the asphalt. A second fast zombie appeared immediately from behind the truck. He growled and ran. Semyon didn't wait, turned on his heels, and with a second blow chopped at the throat, the enemy stumbled and finished him off with a blow to the temple. Pause. Steps were heard. 3. Slow. Shifting heavily. Semyon pulled out a hunting knife, moving silently and confidently from experience. He hit the first zombie with a side blow to the temple, and it fell. The second one managed to grab Semyon by the sleeve, but he stuck the knife under his jaw, raised his eye, and it exploded. The third moved too slowly. Semyon approached himself and with a sharp blow to the crown pierced the brain. 5 corpses lay on the ground. Blood was flowing, but the breathing remained even. No bites, no wounds on the body, only dirt on the jacket and marks on the boots. He wiped the knife on the sleeve of one of the zombies and calmly walked away. Evening has come. Time for a well-deserved dinner. Returning to the car service, the first thing I did was check the trap on the window. No traces. I looked into the smokehouse. The salmon was almost ready but was still marinating. Washed my hands and the knife. He laid the food out on the table. Dinner included smoked duck, which he ate with bread from his supplies. I brewed strong coffee on the stove, military style, invigorating and rich. He adds a spoonful of condensed milk, stirring, and the smell of milk and strong steam fills the room. He sits by the open door and looks at the road, where the fog gradually creeps in, returning back. He takes out a cigarette, takes a drag, and slowly sips his coffee, his eyes full of calm and noticeable fatigue. Night is a quiet final chord. Before going to bed, he eats condensed milk straight from the can with a spoon, washes it down with cold water, and changes his shoes for warm socks. He examines the wounds. Everything is clean, carefully checks the Glock, and places it next to him. He makes a note in his notebook. A fight with 5 zombies. 2 of them fast and 3 slow. The loot is beans, coffee, a flashlight, a first aid kit, and a sleeping bag. He notes that the axe has proven itself effective. He is tired, but alive. He fell asleep quickly on the mattress with an axe at his feet and a kettle nearby, warming his side with its heat. Day 16. Blade of Silence. Early morning brings a hot breakfast and a clear, cool mind. Semyon Morozov wakes up around 5:30. There is a gray, gloomy slush outside. The air feels damp after the night wind, but the building remains intact. He washes his face with cold water from a bottle. The frost is felt on his face. His eyes clear up and wake up. For breakfast, the rest of the smoked duck, the last piece of dense fatty flesh. He cuts it off with a sharp knife and eats it slowly. Then he heats up a can of beans and tomato sauce right in the pan, sizzling and releasing the aroma of sweet spices. He brews strong, bitter coffee, adds a little condensed milk from his emergency supply, and the remaining third of the can. After eating, he carefully cleans the knife, checks the flashlight, the cartridges in the Glock, the mask and gloves. He takes with him 2 bottles of water, a crowbar, a knife, a Glock with 40 rounds, some nuts in his pocket, and a pack of bandages. Today the path lies in the city center, where in high-rise buildings and offices there is hope for valuable loot. Morning shot clearing floors. He drives up to the center in a pickup truck. The city is becoming denser, the streets are narrow, there are many cars parked, and high-rise buildings block the sky. The wind is noisy and quiet rustling sounds can be heard in the buildings. It is dangerous here. Semyon Morozov chooses one of the gray concrete multi-story buildings, 6 stories high. On the first floor, the alarm is already broken, the doors are kicked in. He carefully, half bent over with a knife in his hand, enters. In the corridor, he discovers 2 zombies. He sneaks up silently, strikes one in the temple, the second turns around, but it is too late. The knife hits his eye, and then his brain. On the stairs, he notices another zombie barricaded by garbage, smashes his skull through the railing. He inspects the apartments, finds a jar of peanut butter, 2 cans of peas, and half a pack of pasta. In the old woman's bedroom, there's a knitted blanket, scissors, and a whistle. In the kitchen, he finds suitable vegetable oil, and in the first aid kit, bandages, cephalosporins, and iodine. Each floor is like a roulette. Behind the doors, there is either nothing or zombies on chains. One of them falls from the stairs above. Semyon misses, but his heart is pounding in his throat. On the 5th floor, he freezes, hearing wheezing and shuffling in the ventilation. Damn, they're already up there, he mutters. At midday, he goes out onto the roof, looks into the distance. The city center is teeming with the undead. Shots are heard far to the south. Too many zombies are moving along the pavement. Semyon carefully goes down, pausing at each landing. At the exit, he notices 2 new enemies. He sensed them by smell. He goes around them through the window and goes down the fire escape. He returns to the truck, his hands shaking, not from fear, but from tension. He is whole, but he feels drained for the next year. He's going back. On the way, he presses the gas to the limit. The center is too dangerous for a solo foray. He has enough food and water. There's no point in taking risks. Day of return to the car service. I arrived at the workshop in the middle of the day, earlier than usual. I inspected the area and set a wire trap at the back entrance. I changed my clothes, and they were all covered in dust and dirt. I put the water on to boil and updated the entries in the observation log. He feels tired, his eyes are burning, his back is aching, but inside he is proud that he was not bitten. Evening dinner with salmon heats up some oatmeal and rice porridge, adds a little salt and butter. Opening the smokehouse, the salmon is ready, the skin is golden brown, the meat is firm and smells of wood. Breaks off half and eats with his hands. For dessert, berries picked yesterday. sweet with a slight sourness, washed down with clean water. Sitting on the hood, watching the setting sun. In the distance, the wind sways the dry branches of the trees. Everything seems almost normal. Night sleep and painful thoughts lock the workshop from the inside. Checked the traps and bolts on the door. I took my sleeping bag and lay down on the old mattress. Before going to bed, I looked over my supplies. Beans, pasta, first aid kit. I cleaned my knife and wrote in my journal, "The center is full of danger. There's no point in being alone there. You'll need armor and a partner. For now I am resting. There is space and food. The enemy is not sleeping and neither am I." Fell asleep with a knife at hand and a flashlight under the pillow. Outside there is silence interrupted by rare distant screams. Day 17. Fuel, battle, and warehouse mysteries. The early morning begins with the usual awakening at 5:30. The first sunlight gently touches the walls of the workshop. The night passed calmly and serenely. Breakfast consists of yesterday's porridge, which Semyon Morozov heats up in a frying pan, adding a small piece of smoked salmon for flavor. He brews coffee, sweetens it a little, and then takes out a piece of chocolate hidden in a secluded place. This small reward for yesterday's efforts. After eating, he carefully cleans his weapons, checks his fuel canisters, gear, and lockpicking tools. His plans for today include a western gas station and an industrial area in the north. In the morning, Semyon drives along the dusty western outskirts of the city. The roads are covered with cracks. There are almost no vehicles to be seen, and there are practically no dead people. He pulls into a gas station that he had previously avoided because it was empty. On site, he finds a column in good condition with a mechanical pump and solar panels on the roof. Self-powered, the station can function independently. He turns on the pump to his surprise, finds fuel in the tank, fills his pickup truck to the brim, and also fills 3 20-liter jerry cans, 4 2-liter plastic bottles, and also uses an old flask and a water bottle. Inside the building, he finds a pack of cigarettes, which he takes to exchange or as a distraction gift, as well as a sealed bottle of energy drink. Finds a badge with the inscription Marty, presumably the name of the worker left here, and a portable Victorinox knife. When leaving, he is careful that the smell of gasoline can attract zombies, so he is constantly on alert. By midday, Semyon returns to the base camp in the north. The northern part of the village is a private sector with rare houses, many of which are destroyed. Here live the oldest, slowest, and most dilapidated zombies, often without eyes and covered in peeling skin. What can be found among the things? In one of the kitchens, there are 2 cans of stewed meat and almost depleted flour. In the shed, there is a box of nails, a hammer, and pliers. There is a thick, warm sweater hidden in the bedroom, neatly wrapped in a bag. A bottle of vinegar and 96% alcohol, which can be used for disinfection, fuel, or making cocktails, were found in the pantry. Semyon Morozov enters a house with a basement and stops at the bottom. He can smell a strong, unpleasant smell. It is too dangerous to go down. And there is little time. He finds a map that marks a warehouse on the outskirts of an industrial area. During the day, a battle unfolds in the area with warehouse buildings. Semyon goes there, among abandoned rusty hangars and overgrown areas around the houses. He enters one warehouse. The gates are open, and inside there are containers, shelves, old tools, and garbage. During his search, he finds a box of canned, coarse army rations, a bag of sugar, partially damp but still usable, and an old wood-burning electric stove. Zombies appear in the warehouse. The first suddenly runs out of the shadows between the shelves. The second and third sneak up from behind. Semyon Morozov quickly grabs an axe, strikes one in the neck, then in the head. He stabs the second one in the eye. The third falls from a blow from a crowbar, which breaks his jaw, and Semyon finishes him off with his heel to the head. He sits up out of breath and checks himself. There's only a scratch on his jacket, no penetration, lucky him. In the evening, after sunset, he returns to the car service. He unloads the supplies he found, pours some of the gasoline into a spare barrel. He writes everything down in detail in a notebook. What he managed to find, where he went, and how many zombies he encountered. It's time for dinner. Opening a can of stew, Semyon Morozov stews it with pasta, makes coffee, adding a little condensed milk, only a drop remains. For dessert, a handful of berries and half a chocolate bar. He sits on the roof of a pickup truck, gazing up at the sky, which is strewn with dim stars. In his mind there is a warehouse. Perhaps there are still resources there or even other survivors. Night brings fatigue and anxiety. He closes the workshop and puts the gasoline in a hiding place, lowers the blinds and turns off all light sources. He lies down in a sleeping bag, with a knife and a Glock pistol lying nearby. Before going to bed, he checks the first aid kit and writes in his notebook. Full tank, some extra. But it was too quiet in the warehouse. We need to be especially careful tomorrow. He falls asleep quickly, exhausted but with the sense of victory for the day. In his dream he sees the city before the catastrophe of people, light, noise of the streets. And then silence sets in again. Day 18, day in the forest. Fishing, hunting, and peace. Early in the morning around 5 o'clock, Semyon wakes up before dawn. Cold air creeps through the cracks in the workshop, but it is easy to breathe. Breakfast includes the remains of stewed fish from yesterday's dinner, which he reheats in a frying pan. A couple of dry bread rolls, prepared in advance. Strong coffee from the last beans of an old bag, ground by hand. And a few berries from a tin for dessert. After eating, he quickly packs. A backpack, a fishing rod, a crossbow, a knife, a thermos of tea, and some provisions. Putting on his jacket, he closes the gates of the auto repair shop, starts the pickup truck, and heads northeast into the forest outside the city, where he had been before. The morning began with hunting among the trees. The forest greeted us with a light fog and damp coolness. There was no singing of birds. There was such a thick silence, as if a soft blanket was tightly covering us. Semyon Morozov parked the car in a low spot and carefully hid it with branches. He went deeper into the forest, holding his crossbow at the ready. The steps were silent and precise. Hunting is a skill honed over the years, and Semyon had considerable experience. He sat down near the pile of deadwood and began to watch carefully and wait. Half an hour later, the first movement appeared. The hare was digging carefully at the roots. Semyon took aim and released the bolt. A well-aimed shot ensured instant death. A little later, he noticed 2 hazel grouse nesting in the treetops. With one well-aimed blow, he hit one bird and it fell to the ground. The second one fluttered up and flew away. The feeling of a real hunt filled him with energy and brought back the taste for life. Midday fishing at the forest lake. By midday, Semyon came to a forest lake, which he was familiar with from pre-war times. The water was dark, cool, smooth as a mirror. The sun's rays were breaking through the majestic pines. He settled down on a fallen tree and cast his old, time-tested fishing rod. As bait, I used a small piece of an insect found under a stone. 15 minutes later, the bite started. A small perch was caught and soon another one appeared. Suddenly, fortune smiled and I managed to catch a roach and a little pike. Joy returned like in childhood. It seemed that there was no apocalypse, only water, sun, and calm. A thermos with warm tea, some crackers, and an unusual silence and peace arose in the soul. The day continues with hunting after fishing. Semyon went deep into the forest again. He walked slowly, walking along a babbling brook. The tracks indicated the presence of deer, but the tracks were too fresh to catch up with them. However, he saw a pair of pheasants again near the old fire pit, sneaks up, waits. One shot and the trophy pheasant falls. After that, he decides that the food supply is sufficient and heads back to the car. His catch includes a pheasant, a hare, a hazel grouse, and a couple of fish. Evening falls, and Semyon Morozov returns to the auto repair shop closer to sunset. He quickly lights a fire in the stove, adding fresh kindling. He cuts up the prey. He roasts the pheasant and hazel grouse on coals and cooks the fish in a frying pan, seasoning it with dry spices that were found several days ago. Dinner consists of baked pheasant with a crispy crust, fried perch, poured with berry juice, some rice porridge, and for dessert a handful of dried apples hidden a month ago. Instead of tea, warm water with syrup. He eats alone, but dissatisfied with the results. Today, Semyon was a real hunter. There are enough provisions for a long time, and most importantly, the day passed without meeting a zombie, which is a rarity in itself. At night, he carefully wipes and cleans the crossbow and knife. Then he writes in his notebook, "A good day. Everything worked out. Fish, meat. Not a single dead person. The forest is like another world." He lies down on a mattress in the corner of the workshop. The weapon is lying nearby. The bolt is tightly closed. The light is out. He sleeps deeply, almost without dreams. The silence is broken only by the wind playing with the thin tin outside the window. This is a detailed description of the 19th day filled with hunting, fighting, and a rare evening of peace. It is at such moments that you understand that you have survived and continue to live for real. Early morning brings breakfast and preparation of the smokehouse. Semyon Morozov woke up a little later than usual, his body demanding rest after a tiring hunt. The workshop was silent. A light rain was gently drumming outside the glass, but the air remained warm and calm. For breakfast, he heated up the remains of the previous night's dinner. Fried perch and pheasant cooked in a cast-iron frying pan. To this were added a couple of spoons of rice porridge, browned to a crispy crust. The coffee with condensed milk was strong and fiery, the last sip leaving a sweetish stickiness on the tongue. After the meal, Semyon got down to business. He put the pheasant and hazel grouse in the smokehouse, hanging the carcasses so that the skin was on the outside. The smoke was thick and rich, filling the room with aroma. He carefully took the hare carcass apart, put it in an enamel bowl, sprinkled it with salt and dried herbs, deciding to cook the meat later since there was no time for that now. He poured firewood into the smokehouse and checked the draft. Everything worked properly. In the workshop, the smells of smoke, meat, and old oil created an atmosphere reminiscent of a time when the sky was blue and not covered in a gray layer of ash. Morning brought him back to the northern part of town. At 8 in the morning, he got into a pickup truck and headed to an area he had not previously explored. It was mostly private homes, solid, old buildings with workshops, sheds, and cozy yards. Semyon hid the pickup between 2 garages and started searching the houses. He found 2 cans of condensed milk, several batteries, a pack of cigarettes. He took a wool sweater from the closet. It would come in handy if it got cold. In one of the houses at the entrance, in a table, he found a box with 15 9mm cartridges. Someone was clearly preparing for possible self-defense. Semyon Morozov carefully walked past the garages, one of which was already completely covered in ivy. It was here that he found a sealed box of cereal, possibly rice or pearl barley, and put it in his backpack. It was midday, and he continued his patrol. Soon Semyon had gone deeper into the area and approached an old hardware store. There was a sense of menace here. The door had been left open, bloodstains were scattered across the floor, and shelves had been overturned. He moved silently, holding his knife at the ready. It was quiet inside, but it seemed he was not alone. In the store, he found an old gas burner with rust but still usable. Also found were candles, soap, and pieces of fabric. Small but useful things. In the utility room, Semyon noticed a bottle of cola and an old thermos. Having taken all this, he put the found items in a backpack and decided to move on. During the day, Semyon headed north to a small warehouse where he hoped to find oil or tools. It was dim and stale, and a threatening growl could be heard in the distance. Not taking any chances, he pulled out his Glock pistol, turned on the flashlight, and took a step forward. 3 zombies immediately attacked him. The first was shot in the head, the second almost grabbed him. But Semyon managed to step back and shot the enemy in the lower part of the face. The third and fourth were slow, but very vicious. 2 more accurate shots eliminated them. The fifth was hiding around the corner and suddenly jumped out, but the last shot to the forehead stopped him too. In the end, 5 bullets were spent, but he remained alive. Having caught his breath a little, Semyon leaned against the wall and wiped his forehead. Life is more important than bullets, especially since they can still be found. This fight was a success. It went smoothly and harmoniously, almost like in old tactical games. By evening, around 7 o'clock, Semyon returned to the car service. The weather was cloudy, but the rain had already stopped. There was silence, and it was possible to have a quiet dinner. We lit a fire and examined the smokehouse. The bird had already acquired a beautiful amber crust. The smell was rich and warm. Dinner. Warmed up the leftovers from my morning meal. The pheasant, fish, and rice were lightly crusted from frying and began to crisp pleasantly. Added some water and washed down the food. After that, he took a bottle of cola, mixed it with half a flask of whiskey left over from the previous month on the top shelf. Drank it in one gulp. At first I felt a burning sensation in my throat. Then the warmth spread throughout my stomach, and my eyes narrowed slightly. Then he lit a cigarette from his morning find and looked out at the deserted street for a long time, stroking the handle of his knife. Night sleep to the sound of the smokehouse hum. He checked the locks on the doors, closed the bolt, blew out the candle, lay down on the old mattress and threw his jacket over it. A mixture of alcohol, fatigue, and satisfaction from a job well done rang pleasantly in my head. He was fed, armed and ready, a hunter. And if the next day was like today, there was a chance of survival. The sleep was deep, black, without dreams. The smokehouse continued to work. The fire in the oven crackled rhythmically. The night belonged to him and this city. Day 20. Fuel, reflections, and the first signs of the road. Early morning breakfast and planning the day, Semyon Morozov woke up very early, around 5:30. It was cool outside. Fog shrouded the cars in the old auto repair shop. The dawn was barely breaking overhead, as if time had stopped. The workshop was warm from the stove. Silence reigned, and the air was filled with the aromas of smoked poultry, wood, and fuel oil. Breakfast. Pieces of smoked pheasant and a little hare meat heated in a cast iron frying pan. Leftover porridge fried until golden brown black coffee. Strong, hot, with a spoonful of condensed milk. He ate silently, mentally making a plan for the day. Today he would have to look for fuel. He already had a significant supply, but Semyon Morozov was not used to missing an opportunity to replenish his resources. Morning Eastern gas station. Around 7:30 a.m., he drove his pickup truck to the eastern edge of town, where a gas station called the Red Rooster once stood. The place is now abandoned, but the area is quiet with no sign of the living dead. He drove carefully. The muffler worked properly, so the car made almost no noise. Near the building, the door was locked, but through the window one could see dust and cobwebs, empty shelves inside. I went around to the back and there was a tank that was almost undamaged. Having connected the hand pump, he began to pump thick, aromatic gasoline. It was cloudy, but suitable for use. Result: filled 3 canisters, 10 liters each. I poured a little into the tank and now it is 3/4 full. Found some engine oil, a bottle of WD-40 and a pair of work gloves. One zombie appeared from the shadows, moving slowly. Semyon quietly ran his knife across the dead man's throat and removed it without making any noise. Noon gas station in the center. The next target was the central gas station, surrounded on both sides by office buildings, making it very dangerous. He left the pickup truck 2 blocks away and cautiously approached the object on foot, keeping his Glock at the ready. The situation there was dire. Shop windows are broken, signs of a struggle inside. 2 zombies in service uniforms were slowly wandering around, walking between the columns. Semyon didn't take any risks and deftly neutralized them with a knife, removing them one by one quietly and quickly. In the backyard, I found a technical entrance and through it I got to the main fuel tank. There was a little fuel left, but enough for a couple more canisters. I filled it up carefully. From closed spaces I took. On the map of intercity roads, drawn with a marker, it was clear that someone had been carefully preparing for the evacuation. An almost full energy drink can was nearby. The pack of Oreo cookies was worth its weight in gold, but it remained intact. During the day, he stopped at a gas station outside the city. The task for today was the last one. An abandoned gas station in a forest area, about 6 kilometers from the city. An old road, silence reigned around, and nature almost hid the concrete buildings. The gas station was small, but it operated on an independent tank, and there was indeed a supply of fuel left inside. Semyon Morozov acted promptly. He connected the pump and filled 4 more canisters. One of them remained in the trunk of the car, and the other 3 were hidden in a hiding place under a hatch in the workshop. Besides that, I took an old set of spark plugs and a fan belt. They could come in handy. On the way back, shots were not needed. The journey passed calmly and quietly. Now he had a full tank in the car, more than 10 cans of fuel, and the understanding that he could drive several hundred kilometers without refueling. By evening, around 6 o'clock, he returned to the car service tired but happy. The day had not brought him a single loss. For dinner, he heated up some hare meat with rice, adding a pinch of salt and dried forest herbs. I drank hot water with a small amount of dried berries. For the first time in a long time, he was able to eat leisurely and enjoy the peace and quiet. After the meal, I checked my weapon, cleaned my knife, and jotted down the route to the next state in my notebook, marking the safest routes on the map. At night, having put out the lantern, he lay down on the mattress. The rustling of the wind could be heard behind the wall, like a beckoning call to distant lands. Semyon Morozov could not find peace for a long time, falling asleep. He clearly realized that this city no longer gives hope, only dangers and threats. Supplies, fuel, and a map are available, but if he stays, he will be stuck here forever. Death does not come instantly, it creeps unnoticed and slowly. Perhaps tomorrow he would stay, but very soon he had to move on. Time to find a new route. Move west, where there are fewer zombies, where life is still possible. Or at least death will not overtake here, he thought until he fell fast asleep. The sleep was deep, dreamless, like a farewell to this place that had become both a shelter and a cell for him. Day 21. Farewell day in the old world. Early in the morning, an hour before dawn, Semyon woke up at exactly 4:40. There was no time to prolong the moment. Ahead lay the intense struggle and gathering preparations for departure. He lit a small stove, brewed strong coffee, warming up hare with rice, generously seasoned with salt and dried herbs. For breakfast, he added a piece of smoked poultry and some bread baked several days ago in a tin. Breakfast consisted of the following dishes: fried hare with rice, smoked game, black coffee with condensed milk and a slice of bread, slightly dried by the stove. The taste of the silent meal was accompanied by thoughts about the plan. The north has already been explored. The center is too dangerous. Today my direction is east. In the evening I will do the cooking and packing. And tomorrow morning perhaps, I will set off on my way, if everything is calm. The morning was noisy in the eastern quarters, with the smell of food and the remnants of a past. Life mingled in the air, bringing with them hopes and worries. At 7 o'clock in the morning, wearing his usual gear, a jacket, a knife on his belt, a Glock pistol in his hand and a backpack with empty compartments, Semyon Morozov headed to the eastern part of the city. These were poor neighborhoods with ramshackle houses, trailers, and barns. It was here that he hoped to find food that the looters had left behind. He acted without delay. I inspected 3 one-story houses, and in the storage room of one I found cans of canned corn, beans, condensed milk, and even stew. In the cupboard under the stairs I found a box of oatmeal and 3 packages of instant noodles. The refrigerator contained spoiled meat, but in the freezer compartment of one of the vans there was a freezer unit with frozen chicken. I also found plastic bottles suitable for water or gasoline. In one of the houses there were 2 slow zombies. He strangled them tightly with a rope without making a noise. The result of the morning search was as follows: 6 cans of food, 3 packs of noodles, 1 chicken, 2 liters of water, 2 empty bottles, 1 folding knife as a spare. At 12:15, when he again began searching on the outskirts of the eastern district, Semyon looked into the basement of an old mini-market where food supplies were stored. I immediately felt danger. There were bodies lying everywhere. Noise was heard behind the wall, and traces of a struggle were visible. In the far corridor, near the boxes of canned goods, a zombie with a broken jaw and strong arms attacked him. He fired 3 shots. The first hit the attacker in the head, the second hit the next zombie in the shoulder, and the last one hit him point blank in the jaw. Lost 3 bullets from his Glock, but survived and took away a whole box of groceries, 2 cans of beef and 3 cans of tomato beans. plastic packaging with military dry rations. Semyon Morozov quickly left the dangerous place, not waiting for the rest of the zombies. His face was covered in sweat and he held the food tightly in his hands. The day continues with gathering supplies. Semyon did not stop. It was necessary to stock up as much as possible before evening came, because his plan included 2 days of travel without stops. Walking around a warehouse building in an abandoned area, he discovered another army dry ration, a flask of water, a pack of energy drinks, a map of the nearest roads is a very valuable trophy. Behind, in the shadow of the wooden boxes, a zombie was moving slowly. Semyon quickly and silently stabbed him in the temple with a knife. At this point, the traveler gave up the search. The backpack was almost full. It was time to return home. Evening dinner and cooking chores. Returning to the workshop, Semyon did not allow himself to rest. He immediately began cooking. I lit a fire, set out several pans and pots. In the process, I cooked a variety of dishes. Oatmeal with berries and condensed milk for breakfast, on-the-go fried chicken that was then carefully wrapped in foil. Fried beans with rice and dried meat. I cut up smoked hare and poultry and put them in bags. I heated up one of the dry rations and ate it for dinner so as not to carry extra weight. All products were carefully packed in foil, polyethylene, glass jars, and plastic containers. In addition, I collected 12 liters of drinking water in different containers, took energy drinks, coffee in a thermos, cookies and crackers. He clearly understood that on the road there would be no kitchen or possibility to cook, so it was necessary to have all the dishes ready to eat. Night, early rest, and waiting for dawn. At 21 o'clock, Semyon was already lying on the bed, feeling tired but internally satisfied. Nearby were a backpack, weapons, fuel canisters, a map, food and water supplies, everything necessary for a long journey. On a scrap of paper lying next to the bed, a route was drawn across the southwest to the neighboring state. Detours, bridges, and possible places to spend the night were highlighted in red pen. He looked up at the ceiling and thought, perhaps tomorrow morning I'll start my journey, maybe in a day, but I won't turn back. For the first time, Semyon Morozov fell asleep with thoughts not about zombies, but about the road ahead. Day 22. Start of the journey. Early in the morning, rising before the first rays of the sun, Semyon woke up at exactly 4:30. He quickly put on his jacket, checked his gear, and carefully studied the map again. The pickup is filled to the brim, canisters are neatly stacked in the bed, weapons are always at hand, food is close at hand. Everything is carefully prepared. He didn't waste time on breakfast. He got behind the wheel and started the engine. The lights went out in the workshop, where he'd been working for almost a month. Semyon set off without looking back. Breakfast on the go consisted of hot, strong coffee from a thermos and 2 Snickers bars, quick and high in calories. There are 22 bars left. If you eat 2 a day, it will last for 11 days. But this is more for emergencies than for taste. While the fog was spreading along the road, Semyon was already rushing away from the dead city. Morning road and emptiness around the asphalt was in poor condition with potholes and holes, but the pickup truck held its course confidently. Semyon moved to the southwest, checking the map from time to time. Along the way, he saw a broken column of school buses, but stopped. There was grass growing on the side of the road, rusted cars, but so far no zombies. Several times he passed burnt-out houses and abandoned farms. Once I noticed movement in the distance on a hill, but I didn't waste time checking. I just picked up the speed. From time to time, I drank water and snacked on nuts, so as not to waste extra energy and save fuel. It was midday, and the sun was already starting to beat down mercilessly. The road was becoming more and more uneven and difficult. A small settlement appeared in the distance according to the map. A former village stopped by the road. Semyon Morozov drove past without stopping, but on the opposite side he noticed a barricade made of cars. He thought, these are not zombies. There were people here, or there still are. Just in case, he put the Glock on safety, checked the AR-15 weapon, and slowed down. After about 15 minutes, I found myself on a quiet stretch of road with trees growing to the right and left. The forest muffled the sounds, and it seemed as if peace reigned all around. In the middle of the day, at about 2:30, there was a sharp bang. Semyon braked sharply right in front of his pickup truck. A chain with cans and rags was pulled to the road. It was a prepared ambush. 3 armed marauders flew up from both sides. One with a shotgun was hiding behind a tree, the second was with a hunting carbine, and the third was the closest, with a pistol. Semyon did not lose his head, drove out of the car into the ditch, took out a Glock and fired 3 shots on the move, hitting the closest attacker, who fell. Then he switched to an AR-15, fired 2 accurate shots to the left side. The second attacker fell. The third one crawled away, screamed, but Semyon did not kill him, he just took the weapon. The battle's outcome: the loss of 7 rounds for the Glock and 2 for the AR-15. But the loot turned out to be valuable. 10 shotgun rounds, 14 9mm rounds, 8 carbine rounds, an old non-working GPS, an almost full flask of water, and also a can of stew and an energy drink. Notes: the marauders were poorly coordinated but posed a serious threat. The fighting was loud and it was time to leave. Evening dinner, in silence. By 6 o'clock, Semyon Morozov had driven a few more kilometers from the scene of the skirmish and turned into an abandoned field near the highway. He found a secluded spot from where both sides of the road were clearly visible. Semyon quickly set up a minimal camp without fire or unnecessary noise. Dinner consisted of what he had brought with him: a foil packet of refried beans and meat, a slice of smoked poultry, half a loaf of bread, a sip of whiskey and some water. He sat with his back to the pickup's wheel, looking into the distance. Semyon thought that the first day had passed. There were at least 2 more to get to a safe place, and then there would be time to make decisions. Night sleep in a pickup truck. By 9 o'clock in the evening, Semyon climbed into the pickup truck, locked the doors, closed the windows with bolts, and covered himself with a sleeping bag. A Glock pistol lay on the seat, an AR rifle was at his feet, a backpack with extra food was below, and water, a knife, and a flashlight were within reach. Fuel cans were in the back, tightly sealed. He fell asleep restlessly. The adrenaline from the battle had not yet completely subsided. In his sleep he heard shots, the sounds of chains and footsteps in the grass. Nevertheless, sleep overtook him. The first day of the journey was successfully survived. The next 3 days passed calmly, without incident. Day 26. New starting point. Early in the morning, when the first rays of the sun were weakly breaking through the clouds, Semyon drove off the dirt road and saw a small village hidden in the hills and forests. It was an inconspicuous settlement, cut off from the main highways, where everything was overgrown with grass and moss. There were no major roads and bustle here. Exactly the place he needed to find. 3 days of travel passed without a single encounter. No zombies or marauders were encountered on their way. Only the sound of the wind, swaying trees, and the deafening silence of the surrounding world. Semyon Morozov stopped the car at the side of the road, turned off the engine, and sat there, not taking his eyes off the distant horizon. Finally. Is there really no one here? Or is the worst yet to come? He took a sip of water, ate a Snickers bar, adjusted his belt, picked up his Glock, and got out of the car. It was cool, but the air was fresh. Semyon took a deep breath, smelling the forest and damp earth. The morning was spent on reconnaissance and choosing a shelter. Carefully moving along the streets, Semyon carefully examined the surroundings. The town was unusually quiet. There were no zombie hordes or signs of other survivors. Probably its inhabitants simply abandoned this place. Or they were evacuated. Or something else happened. About 30 minutes later, he came across a small 2-story house. The roof is preserved. Brick walls are strong. There is a basement carport. Behind the house, there is a small vegetable garden, beyond which the forest begins. There is a well and a stream nearby. Great. If necessary, we can even get chickens. Having walked around the area, Semyon carefully checked the locks, examined the windows and the attic. The house looked surprisingly intact. Inside, he found some furniture, dishes, an empty backpack, and an old bicycle. He quickly moved some of the things from the pickup, including weapons, water, food, and fuel cans. He parked the car under a canopy, camouflaging it with tarpaulin and spruce branches. From that moment on, this place became his new base. Noon arrangement and first catch, Semyon began to inspect the house from the inside. On the ground floor there was a kitchen with a gas stove that did not work but could be fixed. The living room with a fireplace was particularly interesting and inspired coziness. An old but sturdy table. A closet with rags, a couple of jackets, winter shoes. On the second floor, bedroom with bed, mattress in good condition. Empty children's room. A utility. Closet with tools, hammer, saw, axe in the basement, shelves with empty jars, lots of storage space. It's as cold as a real cellar. Cobwebs, but dry at the same time. He explored the attic and found a bird's nest and a couple of old candles. All of this could come in handy. After that, he headed to the nearest house. He picked it up carefully, slowly. He took 3 cans of food, beans, corn, and beef, 1.5 liters of bottled water, a sharp kitchen knife, an old map of the area pinned to the wall. During the day, inspection of nearby buildings. Semyon Morozov checked 2 neighboring houses. One was partially destroyed. Apparently there had been a fire. The other was almost empty, but with a storage room in the basement. The following was found: battery-powered flashlight, half a pack of pasta steel frying pan first aid kit with bandages, hydrogen peroxide and iodine, a pack of cigarettes and a lighter old magazine from 2012. During a search of the basement of the second house, a zombie appeared. One slow one, dressed in a postman's uniform. Semyon did not shoot, but hit him in the head with a crowbar. They are here too. Not many for now. Time is my main resource. In the evening, dinner in silence by the fireplace. Returning to the new shelter, Semyon lit a fire in the fireplace. I heated up the beans and corn in a frying pan. I sliced up some smoked meat left over from the old base. I ate a piece of bread and butter from a house I found, and the taste was almost unchanged. I drank water and watched the dancing fiery shadows. The house created a feeling of security and warmth. Right now it seems like everything is too quiet, maybe even quieter than it should be. Night of barricades and peace. Before going to bed, Semyon Morozov covered some of the windows with boards, strengthened the front door with stools and a chest of drawers, rechecked food and weapon supplies, placed a bucket in the basement to collect rainwater. I wiped my weapons, pistol and carbine, left a corner of the fireplace to slowly smolder. I put my jacket under my head and covered myself with a sleeping bag. There was a knife on the table. There was a gun on the chair. There was a flashlight next to the head of the bed. He fell asleep quickly, very tired, but for the first time in a long time with a feeling of calm. Tomorrow a new battle for life will begin from scratch, he thought. From the author. This is my first experience of publishing a test story on this platform. I am posting it not yet completely finished. Semyon's story is just beginning to develop. I have many ideas and characters for this world. This story is the simplest. There are no scenes of violence or horror with zombies, severed body parts and so on. If there is an opportunity to edit after publication, I will continue working on it.